If everyone would find a seat, we'll be starting shortly. What? Oh, yeah. You are awesome.
I said I would only bring it if I could do it.
Thank you very much. Well, that's okay. You can stand here and do that. Thank you so much. Hi.
How are you?
Good. I'll swear you in. We already did this, but do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you to count all the sections of town meeting to the best of your ability and understanding, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the Constitution and the laws of this Commonwealth?
I do.
Great. Thank you. If we need you, we'll call you up. Remember, count yourself when you count your votes.
Wow. It's going to be tough time.
Yeah, it will be.
Surprise.
Funny story, this almost didn't happen. It was at Town Hall until about 2 minutes ago. Thank you to the Ashland Police Department for making it here. A quorum of 25 voters being present, this annual town meeting is called to order. Good evening. For those of you entering the auditorium, please find a seat quickly and quietly. As I have done since I became moderator, I have asked a veteran to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ashland resident Ashley Alberini was a member of the Army Reserves from 2004 to 2012 and was deployed to Tikrit, Iraq from 2007 to 2008 as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where she served as a medic on a trauma team. Ashley currently works as a firefighter-paramedic for the town of Natick and is involved with Rifles to Rods, a nonprofit that seeks to ease veterans' transition to civilian life through fishing. Ashley? States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On behalf of all of Ashland, thank you for your service. Welcome, and thank you for being here this evening. There are a lot of folks here tonight that are either there are hopefully some folks that are infrequent attendees. So I'd like to ask you to pay particular attention to the next few moments. The first order of business is what I call the preliminaries. This is where I go through some of the basics and explain how we will operate tonight. Town meeting is not the public comment section of a Board of Selectmen or school committee meeting, nor is it a public forum or a public hearing. What town meeting is the legislature for the town of Ashland. And tonight we are sitting in legislative session. Together we will collectively approve the town budget, vote on capital purchases, approve bylaws, and more. My name is Adam Schuster, and I am the moderator. My job as moderator is to serve as the presiding officer of this legislature. I believe that part of my job is also to ensure that those here in attendance understand what is going on. So I'll do my best to explain anything out of the ordinary. If at any time you have a question about something, please ask, as there are likely others with the same question. I'll be guided in running town meeting by the third edition of Town Meeting Time, which is published by the Mass Moderators Association, is generally recognized as the authoritative guide to running town meetings in Massachusetts. Joining me at the front of the auditorium in no particular order are members of the school committee, members of the Board of Selectmen, members of the Finance Committee, Town Council Lisa Mead, Town Manager Michael Herbert, Assistant Town Manager Jen Ball, Finance Director, Town Accountant Brittany Jacoponi, Ashland Public Schools Superintendent Jim Adams, Ashland Public Schools Assistant Superintendent Barbara Durand, and with me on stage are Town Clerk Tara Ward and Assistant Town Clerk Cindy Livingstone. This meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for later rebroadcast on WACA-TV. Welcome to those watching us, but we'd rather you have joined us in person. When you checked in this evening, you received a pink index card. It is important that you hang on to this card, as you will not be able to vote without it. Votes will be counted based upon cards, not hands. Because votes will be counted based on the display of cards, non-voters and members of the press may sit anywhere in the auditorium. I will generally be able to determine the results of each vote by a simple show of cards. In the event I am unable to do so, we have tellers that will perform an actual vote count. Tonight's tellers have already been sworn in. Please ensure that you've turned all cell phones and other electronic devices to mute. If you have to take or make a phone call during these proceedings, please leave the auditorium to do so. The warrant that was posted and from which we are working tonight constitutes a notice or a warning to all voters of what we will discuss tonight. Town meeting can only take action within the scope of an article on the posted warrant. Similarly, any discussion is also limited to the scope of the articles on the posted warrant. Town meeting acts on motions. If there isn't a motion before town meeting, no action, including discussion, can take place. In order to allow for discussion, I will entertain a motion and a second for that motion after each article has been introduced and explained, but before discussion commences. Once the motion has been made and seconded, it is subject to amendments from the floor. The procedures for amending an article are listed at the back of your handbook in the section titled Selected Town Meeting Procedures. If you have a question or comment during discussion of an article, make your way to one of the two microphones and wait to be recognized. After being recognized, please state your name and address and direct all your remarks to the moderator. Please keep your comments brief and ensure that they are related directly to the article being discussed. If you are unable to get to one of the microphones, please raise your hand and I'll have a microphone brought to you when it's your turn to speak. To ensure that we are able to hear from the greatest number of people, each speaker will be limited to one 90-second turn at the microphone during discussion of each article. There's a timer over on the screen over there, which is a big improvement from the last version we had. Hopefully, we'll be able to make that work tonight. Speakers may return to the microphone for a second time once others wishing to speak have done so, but that second term will be limited to 1 minute. Frequency limits will not apply to discussion of the annual budget, but time limits will. If you are responding to a question, please do so through the moderator. There should be no direct discussion between parties at town meeting. All debate is to be conducted in a respectful and courteous manner. No comments of a personal nature are to be made. Rude behavior, especially shouting, bullying, and personal attacks, will not be tolerated. Anyone unwilling or unable to comply with this rule will be removed. I'd also ask that everyone refrain from applause or similar outbursts during discussion. With only 14 articles in the warrant, for the first time in a long time, maybe my entire 8 years, we are looking at a single night annual town meeting. You can applaud now. I see absolutely no reason that we can't complete our business fairly early this evening. I'll do my best to keep things moving along, but ultimately, the length of town meeting is up to all of you. Announcements. As you may have noticed, babysitting is available tonight from 6:30 to 9, courtesy of the Ashland Recreation Department and the students of the National Honor Society. Thank you to both groups. I'm hopeful that this is a service that will be provided at all town meetings going forward. Parents and guardians may bring children into the auditorium once babysitting ends or at any time during an annual town meeting. Ashland's 17th annual Green Up event takes place this Saturday from 9 to noon. Join teams of volunteers to help clean up Ashland. Meet at Stone Park Pavilion or go to greenupashland.org to learn more. Annual town elections are 2 weeks from yesterday. 3 weeks. 3 weeks from yesterday. What people don't often realize is that the results of municipal elections have more of a direct impact on our daily lives than the results of either state or federal elections. Yet turnout for Ashland's municipal elections generally runs only in the low to mid-teens, and that's if we're lucky. It's important for everyone to understand that your vote matters. And a note to those candidates in the room tonight, you don't get votes based upon the number of times you speak. Less is more. As always, I'm predicting a beautiful day with nothing but sunny skies on May 21st, so I'd urge everyone to get out and vote, and when you do, take your neighbor too with you. Everyone votes here at the high school, and polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. 1 second. Moderator's motions. The moderator's motions are listed in your handbook on page 4. They are the same standard motions we approve each town meeting, so I'll ask to address them as a group. Do I have a motion to approve moderator's motions 1, 2, 3, and 4 as printed in the handbook? Thank you. All those in favor, raise your cards. You got to raise a card. Thank you. And got it. And opposed. Thank you. That motion carries. On to our business for the night. How many do we have? How many? 258 of you. Thank you very much. Article 1, Here Town Reports. We have 4 reports tonight. First, we'll hear from the School Committee Vice Chair, Mark Terry, on behalf of the School Committee. Mr. Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. My name is Mark Terry. I'm the Vice Chair of the School Committee and stepping in tonight for our Chair, Lori Tosti, who's out of town this week. Thank you to everyone who is committing their time to participate in our community by being here tonight. The Ashland Public Schools remains committed to its vision of being a model school district that embraces the academic and social-emotional growth of all students through a supportive, collaborative, and challenging experience. Our goal is to see our students develop into lifelong learners who contribute positively to society. We are pleased to report that we continue to make progress toward our vision. In my view, the most important step we made this year is to invest in our students' social and emotional learning by creating a Director of Counseling and Social Emotional Learning position and charging her with working with Assistant Superintendent Vieira to infuse social and emotional learning into our curriculum and our school culture. This is critical to our students' success in all realms of life, not just academically, particularly given the substantial increase in student anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. In addition, at the high school, we've started to make progress to restore electives, which were decimated by cuts 20 years ago, in the hope of offering our students the comprehensive high school education students in other districts receive. We continue to see strong year-over-year student growth at both the high school and the middle school. At Mendez, we've implemented approaches to help teachers better identify the needs of each student using the iReady program, and at the Warren School have rolled out tuition-free full-day kindergarten to provide equal access to education for all our kindergarten-age students. And in the coming year, we will modify our preschool program to better serve our youngest students. As always, there is more work to be done. We continue to be challenged by increasing enrollment as we have 96 more students today, district-wide, than we did a year ago, and almost 300 more than we had just 5 years ago. Enrollment increases, while reflecting well in our community and our schools, have and will continue to require us to incur additional transportation staffing costs while losing the opportunity to obtain school choice funding because we no longer have the space to accept school choice students in grades kindergarten through 8. As always, the school committee and the superintendent are committed to submitting a budget we can sustain in the long term, notwithstanding these financial challenges. I want to close my comments by stating that for many years, we as a community lack of revenue. On more than one occasion, we have tried to address different financial challenges that we as a community have expressed, and the view that Ashland is not getting its fair share of support for its schools from the Commonwealth. This year, finally, the Commonwealth, through the governor's budget and the House budget, have committed to revising the funding formula for public school education, the so-called Chapter 70 formula, which will provide a much-needed infusion of funds into our schools. On behalf of the school committee and Superintendent Adams, I want to publicly thank the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and Town Manager Michael Herbert for their support to allocate the additional state education funding for its intended purpose, our schools. Last, I want to thank you, our community, for your ongoing support, not just at town meeting, but in all that you do every day throughout the school year for the 2,862 public school students of Ashland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next up are Joe Rubertone and Aaron Ladd of the Community Preservation Committee to provide an update on the CPC. Gentlemen.
Vacancy related to the Historical Commission, but the 8 members are Gretchen Brabacos, Devin Cashman, Donna Saul, Aaron Ladd, which is my co-chair, Kathy Van Laker from the Conservation Commission.
Joe, can I interrupt you for a minute? Can we get that sound turned up? Folks at home are having trouble hearing.
Okay.
Folks inside are having trouble hearing.
Got it. Eric Emperline is a representative for the Housing Authority. Amy Syed is the representative for the Open Space and Recreation Committee, and I'm the representative from the Planning Board. So, in general terms, there's 4 things that we can do with our funds to support, and those 4 things are open space, historic preservation, recreation, and housing. And this is, you know, a good matrix to understand what we can do with the funds that we have available. Can we go back to the pie chart, please? So this is our estimated ending balance as of the end of fiscal year 19. So we have about 1.7 million in general funds, which can be used for any of the 4 purposes that CPC funds can be used. We have $300,000 in open space funds, $400,000 in historic resource funds, and $900,000 in affordable housing funds. And so before we go through the recent projects, just to talk at a high level about revenues for fiscal year 20, we estimate that we'll have about 1.1 million in revenue coming into the CPC, which includes a 10%, an estimated 10% match from the Commonwealth. In this past fiscal year 19, we received a 24% match from the Commonwealth. And so there's, you know, seemingly a lot of support in the State House for increasing and maintaining the size of the match for the funds that we contribute. So we'll see if we can do better. Now the assumption is a 10% match. So that we anticipate to receive in FY20 will be bifurcated into 4 pools. 10% to historic reserves, 10% to affordable housing reserves, 10% to open space, and 70% to the general fund. And lastly, the commitments we have in fiscal year 20, we have 3 bonds. We're paying Town Forest Bond, the High School Athletic Field Bond, and the Warren Woods Bond. So the total bond payments coming out of the funds we have in FY20 is estimated to be about $670,000. So, and Aaron's going to speak briefly about recent projects that we've worked on.
So thanks to support from town meeting in the past couple of years, we've recently approved work at Stone Park. And thanks to work from the DPW as well as Laborers Union, we're able to complete dugouts to help shelter during softball and baseball games at Stone Park. And those projects have come to fruition this spring and look great down at Stone Park. So appreciate the support in 2018 for that project. As well as the Valentine Estate, which was approved last year, allocating almost 700,000 funds for historical preservation and recreation. There's been work this spring to make sure that the building is weather tight and improved, as well as you've probably seen some landscape improvements around the buildings. There's work ongoing with the town to see what the next steps are, but CPA funds have been great to preserve that property and make sure that it's part of our history for a long time. So we hope that you support Article 10 later in the evening for the bond payments, but we just want to give you a quick visual update of what some of the small projects have been of recent times. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is a report from the Sustainability Committee and Chair Matt Marchquist.
Actually, I'm going to step in for Matt. I'm Ashwin Chandani from 10 Arbor Road. I'm on the Sustainability Committee as well. We wanted to talk to you guys about net zero. I'll just wait for the slides to come up. Thank you. We wanted to kind of bring this up at town meeting because we feel that we're at a defining moment right now as both the community but for the earth. Since about 1900, that's about the time that people have been collecting records on a consistent basis across the globe. We've already seen a warming trend for the Earth by up to 1 degree centigrade. And the latest consensus across most scientific leaders is that we can't afford an average temperature increase by more than 1.5%. And we've got probably about 12 years to make a very transformative change in the way we live, in the way we manage our communities, in the way we consume things. And requiring us to achieve this 1.5 degree target requires us to make some fairly extensive changes so that we rapidly reduce our greenhouse emissions to an effective net zero by 2040. there's been a lot of conversation about what difference a small degree of change would make, and this is pretty much consensus again, where you'll see some pretty large-scale impacts across the globe, including things like the population that will be exposed to water scarcity would go up, double. You'd have a population exposed to droughts, up to 60 million people extra. You'd have the Arctic ice basically being, Arctic Sea being free of ice once every 10 years versus once every 100 years. That happens today. We'd pretty much lose all coral. Forest, that means the Great Barrier Reef or anything in the Caribbean. Habitat loss for plants as well as for vertebrates is expected to be over 2%. So this is just changing of temperature by 0.5 degrees centigrade would cause this kind of a change on Earth, and the expectation is that if we were to sustain a change in that temperature for an extended period of time, the overall change for the Earth would be fairly catastrophic. So even if we were to bring temperatures back down, the ability for us to recover from that kind of an event would be fairly substantial. So keeping all of this in mind, the Sustainability Committee is looking to ask the town to take on a goal, a vision, so that we as a town can basically be a leader and achieve net zero within the town itself. So that what I mean by net zero is effectively the ability for us to reduce our emissions and improve the ability that we can sequester carbon. That's usually through planting trees or increasing our wetlands, so that we're able to basically balance out the amount of carbon that we emit to the carbon that we are able to basically take back into the ecology. It is something that we can do pragmatically. We've already made some substantial steps towards it. As a community, we are a green community already, and this is really taking it to that next level so that we can be leaders. The Sustainability Committee is following right now a process where we want to kind of take a very thoughtful approach towards this. We don't want to just go out there and just put a goal out there. So under the guidance of the Board of the Selectmen, we will be taking on a series of activities. We've already had one fairly well-attended forum last week where we talked about net zero, and I had a number of people from the community join us to both think about the issues, understand the issues, but also propose changes that we could make within town that were acceptable to a larger community. We plan to continue that outreach and education through 2019 and continue to share our progress in public forums. And while we're doing that, we will be introducing a net zero goal in the fall, and we're hoping that the town will support us in adopting that goal. And from there on, we've got quite a roadmap kind of built out in terms of how we start achieving that goal, measuring that goal, and reporting the impact of that goal back to the town. I'm not going to drain that slide. It's a little long. So I did want to call out that we're not sort of unique here. We're surrounded by a number of towns and communities around us that have already taken this step or are in the process of evaluating this step. So towns like Boston and Cambridge have already adopted net zero goals. Today, Newton, Wellesley, and Somerville are in the process of evaluating this. They've already taken some pretty advanced steps, including completing energy audits, and have adopted, in most cases, the goal and are now working towards their plan. Within Ashland, as a green community, we've also taken some fairly substantial steps, including the renewable energy aggregation program that the town manager put out there, so that pretty much all of us now have access to renewable energy and by default are no longer consuming energy that's generated from non-renewable sources. We've changed street lighting to LEDs. We've got municipal electric vehicles and charging stations already coming in, which we'd like to see expand. And then we have a company coming in to do curbside composting as well. For next steps, we'd like you to start joining us at some of the forums that we'll be doing. We will be publishing those. We'd love to see a greater number of people attend those forums and engage us. We're really looking for all viewpoints. We don't want this to be driven by just one set of viewpoints. And we'd really like to see your participation in helping us develop a plan. And certainly would like to encourage you to vote for the net zero goal at the fall town meeting. The last slide has our email on it, sustainability@ashlandmass.com. If you have thoughts, comments, good, bad, or ugly, please reach out to us. We really would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Town Manager Michael Herbert with a short Town Manager's report.
I picked that up, by the way. So.
What was that? I didn't. Nobody heard you. All right. Too long. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, I think. So as has been tradition, I'm just going to give you a brief update of some of the previous warrant articles that have been passed at town meeting, some of the new initiatives, and where they are in terms of implementation. I want to first start out with an article from the 2018 special town meeting in November. We acquired recently the Rail Transit District property, so that is the property on the right side of the MBTA access road. It includes 24 acres of open space also on Lot 2 on the other side of the access road. Recently, the Friends of the Upper Charles Trail, they submitted a grant application for engineering a section of the Upper Charles Trail on Lot 3, and so we had a site walk that was really well attended. Looking forward to that. Next, also on Lot 3, a piece of property was donated to the Metro West YMCA, and they plan on building a new regional facility that's going to serve the town of Ashland, Hopkinton, and Holliston. That's something that we're all really excited about. It's an opportunity to get some new programs, new services, I will say a pool for the town, and we're really excited, looking forward to that. We'll start the planning process for that this year. In 2017, the town meeting passed funding for what's known as the Sudbury Riverwalk Trail. And thanks to the diligent efforts of the Open Space and Recreation Committee, any of you out here, you should raise your hand, and Assistant Town Manager Jen Ball, we've started the work on that and completed the first phase. How many of you have actually been able to go out on the Sudbury Riverwalk? Good. Hope to see more of you do that. It's a great trail. You see a view here from the observation deck. Actually, later this week, next week, we will get the bids in for the long span bridge, which will help connect Mill Pond Park with the rest of the trail. So also in 2018 at the special town meeting, we passed the new public safety building, or funding for the design and engineering of a new public safety building, and also a gift of land from the developer where this would be located. So we're currently going through the process to transfer that gift parcel to the town. There's some legal stuff that has to happen. The town also in February, the Public Safety Building Committee selected an owner's project manager and recently decided on an architect. We will begin the process of designing that building over the summer and are looking forward to breaking ground next year. Next to last, I wanted to talk a little bit about the new Mendez School. Again, last year at annual town meeting passed, and it was actually passed at the ballot as well, funding for the feasibility study for the new Mendez School. This is a required step for the MSBA process, which gives us the opportunity to be reimbursed over 50% for the project costs. We have been accepted into the MSBA process, and recently the Mendez School Building Committee selected an owner's project manager, which is a major step for this process and this project moving forward. And then finally, as Mr. Ladd mentioned, we have started work on the Valentine Estate. This was acquired last year. We've done a little bit of work cleaning out around the property itself, and then also doing some things to secure the building and make it weather tight so it doesn't go through any more destruction. So we'll be talking more, I think, over the course of the year about what we plan on doing with that property, and hopefully have a more general community conversation about what we're going to do with that great property moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. There being no vote required, we'll move on to Article 2. Fiscal year 2019 budget adjustments sponsored by the Town Director of Finance and Town Manager. To see if the town will vote to transfer or otherwise fund sums of money which are necessary to make adjustments to the FY 2019 budget, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends the town meeting vote the budget adjustments as presented in the motion. Mr. Herbert.
Yes, I would actually defer to Ms. Iacoponi on this one.
Brittany.
Thank you. So in this article, we are requesting to reduce our health insurance budget by $240,000, and that is due to health insurance rates coming in a lot lower than what we had anticipated, and transferring those funds to our town council budget of $58,350, and that is for a consultant for the Eversource pipeline project. $61,751 to our Keefe Tech assessment, $137,000 to the school budget, and that is in the general fund. The difference of $17,101 will be made up with the increase in state aid. On the next page, we're requesting a $30,000 increase in our solid waste enterprise fund, and that is due to an increase in our waste management contract. That is due to an increase in recycling costs, and also we've added 2 additional weeks to, what's it for again? Oh yeah, waste removal. In our sewer enterprise fund, we're requesting $110,835, and that is to increase our Framingham assessment, which came in a little bit higher than what we had budgeted. We receive a preliminary assessment back in January, and our final assessment doesn't come in until several months later, and it came in a little bit higher this year.
Thank you, Brittany. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion that the town transfer available funds from the specified accounts in the FY 2019 budget to the specified accounts as follows. General Fund, account 1915, Group Health Insurance, decreased by $240,000. Account 1151, Town Council, increased by $58,350. Account 1399, Keefe Tech Appropriation, increased by $61,751. Account 13,000, School Department, increased by $137,000. Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, increased trash removal appropriation by $30,000. Sewer Enterprise Fund, increased Framingham assessment by $110,835. Do I have such a motion? Second. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll move on to a vote. We'll start with a vote of simple cards. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes unanimously. Article 3, Fiscal Year 2020 Budget. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from available funds and/or transfer from available funds in the Treasury such sums of money as are necessary to defray charges and expenses of the town, including debt and interest, for the ensuing fiscal year, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. As is our custom, we will now hear the Finance Committee's report from Adam Elbert, Chair of the Finance Committee. Mr. Elbert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, before you continue with the article, I'd like a couple of clarifications, please.
No, please sit.
The question goes directly to...
There is no question. There's no motion on the table. There's no article open for discussion.
It's not. It's a clarification of your proposed motion.
The motion passed and was voted on.
This article? I hope we haven't voted on it yet.
Article 3, we haven't
That's right.
gotten anywhere close to a motion, Gary.
I need clarifications
Gary,
before
please
we
sit down.
discuss it.
Gary, please sit down. Mr. Elbert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Next slide, please. My name is Adam Elbert. I am the chair of the Ashland Finance Committee. To my left, Committee Member Jennifer Cooney, Committee Member Jonathan Moore. To my right, Ryan Turncliffe, Committee Secretary. To his right, Scott Warnetsky, our Committee Vice Chair. To his right, Jack Walsh, Committee Member. And to his right, Ed Hart, Committee Member. Next slide, please. So the Finance Committee has three main actions that they take. We're the authorizing body for expenditures from the Reserve Fund. We consider all articles in the warrants for town meeting, and we hold one or more public hearings with respect to the warrant and distribute this report. In the last 5 years, the Finance Committee has striven to provide their recommendations to the public in advance of town meeting, and in the last 10 years, expenditures made from the Reserve Fund have been primarily dedicated to snow and ice-related deficits and legal expenses. Next slide, please. So I'd like to provide a bottom line upfront summary. This is our budget summary for the years 2018 through 2020. The FY20 total budget is approximately $62.6 million, representing an increase of approximately 7.6% versus the FY19 total budget. Thanks to the advocacy of State Senate President Spilka, a more equitable funding formula was implemented at the state level, and the associated increase in Chapter 70 funding is responsible for $1.7 million of the budgetary increase, which is roughly 3% of the 7.6% increase. Next slide, please. So now I want to give you a look back over the last decade. This should look very familiar to the presentation that you saw last year. Next slide, please. So what we're showing on these charts is primarily actuals replacing projected from last year's presentation. This slide shows the FY19 revenues in constant dollars. This is revenue and expenditures per capita. And what you can see is our numbers came in, revenues versus expenditures, almost exactly even for 2018. Next slide, please. So this is the budget summary. You can see the progression from 2018 to 2020. The school budget increase is larger than normal due to the Chapter 70 funding increase. Debt also increased due to the school feasibility study and Valentine Estate acquisitions that were approved at the last year's town meeting. Next slide, please. These are the increases broken down by municipal departments. So you can see that there's a significant increase as we move in the public safety direction. Public Works has gone up a little bit, and the administration has gone up. Most of the other accounts have stayed relatively flat. Next slide, please. So if you look at our financial history in terms of employee benefits spending, one of the ways we've tried to better manage our finances is by managing non-discretionary costs such as employee benefits. And in 2015, town management made the very difficult decision to switch health insurance carriers to the state's Group Insurance Commission, the GIC. As a result, we've seen a significant reduction in benefit costs while still providing quality health coverage for our employees. The move to GIC results in us saving almost $2 million for the fiscal year 2020 alone. And that's allowed us to make significant investments to services that we deliver and community development. Next slide, please. So when we look at long-term debt per capita, again, we've made a concerted effort over the last 5 years to prepare for major investments such as the new public safety building, the new school downtown, and other community enhancements, as well as land purchases for open space. As a result, we've seen our debt increase due to the approval of a number of these projects. We've prepared for these investments by focusing on actions that are designed to increase our bond rating, which results in our ability to borrow at lower rates. That saves you money. That's a good thing. Another way we've prepared for these investments is by managing our long-term debt to minimize the impact on the overall tax rate. Next slide, please. So this shows you our financial reserve fund balance. These policies were implemented back in 2013, and they've led to a significant increase in our rainy day reserve levels. We've set aside special funds for a special education stabilization fund to address the significant swings that we see in out-of-district special education costs. And we've also set aside funds in an OPEB trust to handle other post-employment benefits. And this long-term financial planning has led to our bond rating being increased twice. And Ashland now is one of the few communities in Massachusetts that's received and maintained a AAA bond rating from Standard & Poor's. Why is this important? Well, the bond rating increase projects to the town saving $100,000 per year in debt services costs for the public safety building, which is why achieving and maintaining this bond rating is so important. Next slide. So these are the proposed 2020 general fund capital projects. These projects are funded directly through the general fund, and consistent with prior years, the total allocation to these projects is $750,000. Next slide. These are the 2020 debt-funded capital projects. What you can see here is that there's a number of projects being proposed where we're going to be using debt funded through the general fund or through the water enterprise fund. These include the downtown improvement project as well as the water main upgrade. Next slide. So what does it all mean? Our finances are in a really good state from a town perspective. We have a very strong financial position on our reserves. We've decreased reliance on our state aid, and we still maintain our AAA S&P credit rating due to the well-managed debt and finances. Our property taxes are strong. However, S&P has told us that when referring to our pension and OPEB liability as something we need to really keep our eye on. And I know Mr. Hand is smiling because he loves to hear this. And as always, we're worried about our health insurance costs rising. We've done a really good job of trying to keep a lid on that, but we don't have total control over that, so that's always a risk that we incur as we go through each year. Next slide, please. So a couple of things on the warrant articles that you're going to look at. The downtown revitalization project funding that you see in warrant article 4. There's $6.5 million in local capital funding that's being proposed, $5 million to be funded through the general fund, $1.5 million through the water enterprise fund, and then $4 million that we've received through state funding. So the total project cost is estimated at $10.5 million. So hopefully this makes it a little clearer where the monies are coming from and how they're going to be used. Next slide, please. And then the Economic Development Special Revenue Account, which is warrant Article 5. This is to be dedicated to economic development and uses the local meal tax revenue. So this gives us a flexible account to allow us to think strategically and plan ahead. If we don't have a fund like this, we wouldn't be able to save resources from one year and apply them to a subsequent year. That allows us to potentially take on larger projects and prepare in the future for economic downturns where we may not be able to have as much meal tax available in future years. This does not take any funds away from other departments, and that's because the goals for the other departments for the meal tax use have been exceeded. So we've met all our original goals with the meal tax, and this is an opportunity to take it and use it for something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Voting on the budget is a two-step process. First, we will review and vote on the appropriations for each of the various accounts. After action has been taken on all the accounts, we will vote on the overall budget motion, at which point in time, Gary, I'd be happy to entertain any questions about the motion. I will start by reading the numbers and names of a series of accounts. If you have a question or comment on a particular item, yell out "hold." After voting on all unchallenged items, we will go back and discuss any that were held.
Mr. Moderator, could you clarify something pertaining to what you are describing at this point in time so that I have an understanding of what we're voting on?
I just explained very clearly, Gary, that we are about...
The clarification to me is not significant. It's not sufficient
If it's,
to
well,
answer my questions.
I'm sorry, Gary, that's going to
Well,
be
I
good
mean, you're
enough.
not the final word on what I understand. So
No,
I'm asking
Gary,
if I can
but-
ask a question.
And I said, we've done this the same way for 10 years. You've been here for 10 years.
I've been here for 35 years.
Well, I've been here, you've been here for 10 years. So this is the same way we've been doing it for 10 years.
I understand that, but I'm looking for clarification on your term municipal budget. This is a general question, goes over the whole line item,
Municipal equals town.
correct?
It's not the state budget.
But this is also a budget. I mean, is not the term budget referring to both revenue and expenses?
This is an expense budget.
This
We
is
do
an
not
expense budget.
vote
So
revenues.
this is an appropriation, is that correct?
An appropriation and potentially a transfer, like it's always been.
And a transfer, correct. Now, I would like to have you ask the town council whether or not she's familiar with Part
Gary,
1, Title
Either
7,
Gary,
Chapter
either,
44, Section 31.
Gary,
which
either, you have two
states-
choices right now. One is to sit down, the other is to leave. You make the choice.
I will leave, but I have a law here, and I'd like to get clarification from the town council
you can
as
do
to
it.
whether it's applicable.
Then you can go outside and talk to her.
I'm a
she'll
taxpayer
walk
in
out
this
with
town.
you.
I have a right to talk to the town council as much as you do.
Not on town meeting floor, you don't.
Oh, yes, I do. This
night,
is my
Gary.
meeting. I'm the ratepayer. This is my meeting.
Good night, Gary. The chief will help you if you need help.
Then he'll have to help me because this is my meeting.
Chief.
I'm the ratepayer. I'm the person who does the fees.
You and you alone, that's right, just you. Good night, Gary.
No, I'd like my question answered from general counsel. We can talk outside. Not unless general counsel wants to come with me.
Please, be reasonable and let's go outside and talk about it.
No, I'd like a clarification to my question about a particular state law that I find that should be applicable to
Gary,
this.
one last time I'm going to ask you, can we please go outside? Thank you. Let's go.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Hanna?
my mobility is rather awkward, but
Well, that's fine. We can have a microphone brought to you when there's something to ask a question about.
I do have a question on, now that you've
There is no, Mr. Hanna, there's nothing to discuss. We haven't gotten anywhere. I haven't even said the first account number yet,
I don't even see it on there to discuss.
because there's nothing to discuss.
OPEB is something you should discuss, and every year from now on,
Mr. Hanna, if you, dear, I didn't know we were that close. Well, honey, if you can find the word OPEB somewhere in the warrant, we can talk about it when we get to that part of the warrant. How's that? If you can find the word OPEB in the warrant, we can discuss it when we get there. As long as you can find it. I didn't write the warrant, I just run it. Administration, account 1123, town manager. Account 1138, central purchasing. Account 1139, telecommunications. Account 1151, town council. Account 1155, data processing. Account 1161, town clerk. Account 1162, elections, town meeting. Account 1163, board of registrars. Account 1182, economic development. Account 1180, human resources. We have a hold on town manager. That's it. Hang on, Julie. We're going to. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes. We had a hold on town manager, Ms. Nardone.
Hi, Julie Nardone.
You can pull that down a little bit, Julie, so you don't have to stretch your neck. Or you can just pull it out if it's easier. There you go.
Okay, so the town manager department. How many employees are in this department?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear the question.
Oh, how many employees are in this department?
How many employees are in the town manager department? Mr. Herbert?
4.
4.
And so if I divide that, it's about 136,000 per employee. Seems high. Can I please ask what the percent change is for?
What is the percent change for? The percent or the dollar change?
The 7.58, I think.
Why the 7.58 increase in the town manager's budget? Mr. Herbert?
So there was, I signed a new employment agreement, which.
Could you move the mic a little closer to you, Mike? Thank you.
So the major change is I signed a new employment agreement that keeps me here through 2021. Also, there was an adjustment to the salary of the assistant town manager. We had just a couple of cost of living adjustments. We've also added $5,000 for the cultural council to supplement what they get in their from their state grants. And I've also included $5,000 for a diversity initiative that I want to do next year.
Okay. And does this include all the salary increases for fiscal year 20 that would be in the salary contingency later on?
Mr. Herbert?
Just for me. So
Just-
any incentive that I could potentially have, any potential payment is actually included here, whether or not I get it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I have one request. Can we get a wireless mic since we seem to be swimming in cash? It would just be easier.
You know what? Julie, listen to this. Just listen.
Sitting around.
Listen, I completely agree with you. I just wanted to hear that.
We'll have to celebrate that with a cup of tea.
With a second wireless mic while we're at it.
Thanks. This thing is just spinning around.
Seeing nothing further, all those in favor of the town manager's budget, please raise your pink cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes, but not unanimously. Finance, account 1135, town accountant. Account 1141, assessor's office. Account 1145, treasurer. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes, but not unanimously. Development Services, account 1171, Conservation Commission. Account 1172, Open Space Committee. Account 1175, Planning Board. Account 1241, Inspectional Services Department. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you, and opposed? That passes unanimously. Public Safety, account 1210, Police Department. Account 1220, Fire Department. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes unanimously. Health and Human Services, account 1510, Board of Health. Account 1543, Veterans Services. Account 1544, Council on Aging, Recreation, Youth and Family Services. Account 1610, Public Library. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes unanimously. Public Works, account 1192, Public Buildings and Property Maintenance. Account 1421, DPW Administration. Account 1422, Highway Construction and Maintenance. Account 1423, Snow and Ice Removal. Account 1424, Highway Street Lighting. Account 1429, Highway Combined Fuel. Account 1491, Cemetery, Parks, and Trees. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes unanimously. Education, account 1300, School Department. Account 1399, Keefe Tech Vocational School. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes. Debt, account 1710, account 1710, total debt. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes unanimously. A quick note before we get to the capital projects line. The capital projects listed in the handbook are anticipated to be funded under the account 1930 appropriation. The appropriation we are about to make is not for the individual items listed, but rather for account 1930 in total. As such, the individual items listed are not subject to amendment. Account 1930 capital projects. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes. Benefits and insurance, account 1911, employee retirement. Account 1912, workers' compensation. Account 1913, unemployment compensation. Account 1914, employee health fringes. Account 1915, group health insurance. Account 1945, other insurance. Salary account 1960, salary contingency. Account 1965, municipal efficiency program. Account 1132, reserve fund. All those
contract, and that was at DPW. We still had 3 unions outstanding, the fire department, police department, and clerical. So it includes a percentage for those unions once they settle their contracts, and it also includes a certain percentage for non-union personnel once performance reviews are done.
Can I have some examples of non-union personnel that would fall under this?
So certain clerical positions are non-union. The positions in the town manager's office are non-union. Department heads are non-union. There might be a few more clerical positions that are non-union, but it's mainly department heads.
Okay, and are these in addition to the salary increases that were already mentioned in the previous town manager category?
I'm going to stop you. Not going to ask you, but just please direct your questions to me.
Oh, okay, I thought
So,
we were
no,
having a
I know,
dialogue.
I'm trying to avoid
Okay,
that
I'm
as best I
confused.
can.
I don't know where to look.
So the question
Okay.
was, is this in addition, does this include the same people that were included in the town manager's budget?
Yes, it includes a certain percentage for the staff that he has in his department.
Are
But
those,
any-
okay, sorry.
Sorry, but anyone that has an actual contract, their contract is included in their department's budget.
Okay, are these salary increases or bonuses, or both?
It's a cost of living adjustment. It's not a bonus, it's not
Okay.
a,
All right, thanks.
And I mentioned this in the beginning, and I just interrupted Julie, not because I wanted to interrupt her, but please direct your questions to me. It flows much better if there's no back and forth between folks at the microphone and the folks at the table up front. All those in favor of the salary contingency, please raise your cards. Thank you very much. And opposed? That passes. Enterprise funds, 6,000 water enterprise, 6,100 sewer enterprise, 6,200 trash collection, 6,300 field management, 6,400 cable access, 6,500 stormwater. All those in favor of the unchallenged items, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes. We have approved the individual line items in the budget. Now we need to approve the overall funding mechanism. For that, I'll entertain a motion. A, for the general fund, that the following amounts be transferred from the respective accounts. Sale of cemetery lots, $42,500. Dog licenses, $37,500. And that the balance be raised and appropriated, $62,554,649. B, for the water enterprise fund, that $3,309,807 be raised through water rates. C, for the sewer enterprise fund, that $5,954,274 be raised through sewer rates. D, for the rubbish collection enterprise fund, that $1,270,101 be raised through solid waste rates. E, for the fields management enterprise fund, that $116,706 be raised through fees for field usage. F, for the cable access enterprise fund, that $200,000 be raised through cable franchise fees. G, for the stormwater enterprise fund, that $303,031 be raised through stormwater rates. Do I have such a motion? Discussion. Sorry, should open for discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor, please vote with your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes. And we have a budget. Article 4, Capital Plan, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. To see if the town will vote to raise, appropriate, transfer from available funds to the Treasury, and/or borrow funds in order to fund a portion of the capital plan, and if a borrowing that any premium received by the town upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, lest any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of the issuance of such bonds or notes may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20 of the General Laws, thereby reducing the amount to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends the town raise, appropriate, transfer available funds in the Treasury and/or borrow funds in the manner and for the purposes set forth in the motion. Mr. Herbert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. All right, so I'm just going to give a presentation on the capital budget. As was said before, we have a number of projects on here, but I'm going to focus on two, obviously that are the most expensive, but also I think that are the most transformative for this town. And then these are two that actually have been talked about for many, many years. I want to focus on the downtown streetscape improvements and the water utility upgrades for downtown, then also what's known as the non-participating costs for Pond Street or the Route 126 project. When thinking about downtown, I think we all know that there's a lot of work that can be done, but we're trying to create a downtown that goes back to being a destination and not necessarily one that's a pass-through. And you know what, I'll put it as a slideshow so you don't see my notes. It's kind of embarrassing. I think anybody who's been through downtown, they realize what the existing conditions are. And here's just some good examples. We have ADA non-compliant ramps and sidewalks. Anybody who has tried to walk or bike in downtown Ashland realizes you're taking your life in your own hands. we have an antiquated utility infrastructure, including water infrastructure. We've had I believe four water main breaks in the last 2 years. We have obstructions in sidewalks, as you can see here in the lower left, where our sidewalk machine snow removal machine had to go around the utility pole. And I think most importantly, it's not really reflective of who we are as a community and where we're going as a community. It's not reflective of community pride. It's tired. It's special in the way that the people here are special, but there's a lot of work to be done. The National Citizen Survey we did, I think, about 3 years ago. Anybody here took the National Citizen Survey? It was about a year, or an hour-long survey. Probably felt like a year. You'll probably, if you look at the results of that, we had a below-average rating for the nation in bicycling and walking. But you know where we scored the lowest was actually the vibrancy of downtown in our commercial area. Only 19% of our community rated that positively, and we have an opportunity to change that. The scope of work that we decided for this initial part of the downtown project includes Main Street from basically the pond or the Pine Hill section across the river on Main Street to the intersection with Homer and Summer Street. And then also Front Street, from the intersection of Main Street over to the end of the Ashland lumber site. This is the scope of work that was refined in the downtown redevelopment study that was completed back in 2010. So for those of you that say that we do these reports and then they just kind of stay away for a while, we actually do go back and look at them and listen to them. But again, it's a project that's been talked about for a while, but we really haven't made a significant investment in time and resources and made it a priority until 2017. That's when the executive team, means the Board of Selectmen, Town Manager's Office, and really a number of people, including the Ashland Redevelopment Authority at the time, appropriated funding to do the 25% design, which we hired BSC Group to do that. Over the course of a couple years, we've appropriated over $1 million for design and engineering. We've held multiple public forums to determine and refine the design. So we had our first public forum in September of 2017. The second community workshop was in March of 2018, and then we had the final reveal of this design in September of 2018. These were some of the most well-attended events that I've been a part of, community events. I've gotten to know a lot of you through these. I think the first or second one, we actually had over 100 people attend, which for a workshop is pretty much unheard of. We also established a co-urbanized page, or a page on our co-urbanized website that contained all the information, kind of gave a progress report of where we were. We've received 745 comments. People could go there on a map and actually talk about what they thought was right and wrong in downtown. We had a survey, actually a couple of surveys, where we had 89 survey results. And a lot of the things we heard really came down to the fact that we needed to make it a place-making elements. We needed to make it a destination. We also needed to incorporate bicycle and pedestrian amenities. And then another thing that was really, really important is, I'm looking at Kate here because she brought this up, it needs to be practical, not just pretty. So when we have things like the roads open, we need to start looking at replacing our water main infrastructure and do things of that nature. Over the course of the design, we came up with a number of project benefits. So first, it improves traffic operations. So we're going to have new signals, signal improvements, and traffic realignment. It's going to improve flow and reduce traffic congestion, not just for now, but it's going to keep, it's going to be a better level of service into the future as the region grows. Has a number of environmental and sustainability benefits. So we've increased the green space in downtown. We've added street trees. With the traffic improvements, we reduce idling. Also, if we move more towards a multimodal system of transportation where we're using bikes and walking, reduces traffic emission or car emissions as well. And then there's also new drainage and stormwater retainage built into this plan as well. It has complete streets, which is the term where you have new ADA accessibility standards, so it's accessible to those that are handicapped. Got new crosswalks, sidewalks, hawk signals. If you know where the library is, you see that big flashing sign that's a crosswalk. Includes a couple of those, and then also bike lanes and sharrows. The aesthetic improvements, I think, are pretty evident. We'll have new placemaking elements, including vegetation, benches. We'll have the undergrounding of utilities. We'll have things like period lighting and other period details. The benefits to businesses, it actually increases Main Street on-street parking by 14%. I always say that we don't necessarily have a parking problem. I think there are a lot of people who would disagree with me on that. So we've increased parking on Main Street. And we've also improved pedestrian access to businesses. And like I said before, we have new water mains and paving as infrastructure. This is just an example of what the improvements are. This is the Main and Pleasant Street intersection. So we have wider sidewalks. We have clearly marked crosswalks. We'll use like a brick pattern, but it'll be a resin material. For traffic safety, you do things like reduce the pedestrian crossing distance. So you'll see the islands there that make it a little bit safer for pedestrians to travel those long distances. We've increased vegetation and permeability for stormwater management, and then we've increased placemaking elements. You'll see a number of those street trees, and there's benches, et cetera. This is just one rendering. Actually, I want to say this doesn't include the street trees, so you could see a little bit better. This is looking north on Main Street, looking towards the Historical Society. You see Town Hall on the left, the newly renovated brick store on the right, and then a new crosswalk. I want to talk a little bit about undergrounding. Obviously, it has a lot of aesthetic improvements, but it's not just for aesthetics anymore. We have, as the effects of climate change have become more and more evident and more real, we're seeing that utility undergrounding is actually better for climate resiliency. A good example happened just last year. A couple of these pictures are from last year. When we had those big storms in March, we actually had a 3-day blackout in parts of downtown. Actually, our emergency services had to run on a gas generator for a few hours. So it's pretty important to make sure that we think about climate change and think about the future and plan for that. Actually, the one on the bottom, the picture on the bottom right, I don't know if you can see it, that's a tree on fire from actually March of 2019, actually, this most recent storm. So why now is the right time? We've talked about this for decades. I think it's important to do this now just from a community development standpoint, but I also think it's important to do it from a practical standpoint. If we do all of this stuff now, by coordinating and consolidating the utility, water, and road work, it saves the town almost $500,000 in costs. So it includes savings on paving, mobilization and excavation, police details, and engineering. It gives us the opportunity to leverage state funds, which we might not have the opportunity to do in the future. And then it's also a strategic investment from a timing standpoint if we do it now. We're going to have 2 key parcels for downtown revitalization in the near future. Those are the police and fire building. So public investments lead to higher quality development, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a later slide. Just the project costs, streetscape enhancements are $3.5 million. The utility undergrounding is $5.5 million. We've allocated $5.5 million for that. I want to say that the undergrounding could very well be cheaper. Hopkinton recently got their bids in for undergrounding. It came out to $3.7 million for actually a slightly longer length of roadway. They don't have to jack under the railroad tracks, so that's going to add a little bit to the cost. Also, Eversource gave us a price of the design of an initial price of $560,000. That was appropriated last year. We actually were able to do it for $150,000, so we saw significant savings there. So we're trying to be conservative. And then the water main replacement and relining is $1.5 million. Total project cost is $10.5 million. The project funds, again, we're going to use state funds in the form of MassWorks. We have a MassWorks grant for $3 million. We have what's known as Chapter 90 state funds to the tune of $1 million. This article asks for local appropriation from the general fund of $5 million and a local appropriation from the Water Enterprise Fund of $1.5 million. So again, we're trying to leverage state funds to the best of our ability. And so if you take out the water project, the percentage of this covered by the state funds is almost 45%. Percentage covered with the water project is almost 40%. So we're talking about the cost of doing it. I think it's important to talk about the economic benefits as well. So I think if you look at, there's a number of studies that have been done across the country that show if you make a public investment in your infrastructure and in your streetscape, you will start realizing private sector benefits as well. You can just look at the rehabilitation of one of our recent buildings, 60 Pleasant Street, the old Gamewell building. Once that was rehabilitated and renovated, we actually saw a 200% increase in value there. The reconstruction of 21 Main Street, that was a tear down and reconstruction. Those of you know that building, that's where the bagel table is now. Hopefully you've had a chance to enjoy that. We actually saw an 800% increase in value of that parcel. And then if you look at an investment in downtown, if you just realize a 30% increase in the value of the parcels on some of the downtown major streets, it would actually equal a $15 million increase in value. So almost 3 times the amount we would be putting in locally. We would see operational savings from not having to do water repairs every couple of months. I think the last 2 cost us $40,000, Doug. Doug's nodding his head. Those are just going to continue to happen if we do not take care of our infrastructure. So that's just briefly the downtown project. I want to move now to the Pond Street revitalization project. Again, this is an investment in time, money, and public process. We've been talking about this for a couple of decades. Where's Paula? Is Paula Parker here? Oh, Paula's back there. Paula's been a champion for this along with Sarah Hines and Ed Bates for many, many years. Again, we really started getting serious about this in 2013 and 2014 and started talking to the state about what we could do to leverage more state funding. So we invested $500,000 in local funds to do what's known as a 25% design and then an electrical study. MassDOT actually took care of the rest of the design funds, the 75 and 100% design, and actually put that on the State Transportation Improvement Program. We had a number of forums to, again, determine and refine the design. A lot of things that we heard is this is a roadwork project, but people wanted to make this a corridor transforming project, a town transforming project. So landscaping was very important to create an attractive gateway, and then lighting needed to be both aesthetically pleasing and functional. Oops. Pond Street, the total project is $17,604,000. Now, I want to be very, very clear that the project is happening whether or not you vote tonight or vote in the affirmative tonight. It will strictly be a roadwork project, though, if it's done by the state. What we're asking for is $1.3 million in local non-participating costs. So that includes things like the light poles and luminaires, fancy word for lights, and things like more decorative crosswalks. The project benefits, we're going to have bicycle access and amenities as part of the Upper Charles Trail. This is a cross-section rendering of what one of the sections would look like. We have sidewalk, as you can see, we have sidewalk and paths for pedestrian access. We're going to have targeted landscaping, again, that creates an appealing town gateway. We will have new signals at Spyglass and realignment of the signals at Algonquin. So those of you that are familiar with Algonquin Terrace and where it meets 126, on the other side of the road, there's a road coming off on the side from Dunkin' Donuts. Presents a pretty precarious situation. That will be realigned and a signal installed. And it's also going to increase and improve business access. So I've got a couple of other renderings if those are necessary, but at this point, I would turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. During his presentation, Mike mentioned that there was one of the sessions, the community participation sessions, where there's great turnout. There are 100 people, and one of the things that we fight with all the time is participation and turnout. There was nothing particularly major on tonight's warrant, so those of us who, I don't say do this for a living, figured the turnout was going to be 100 people, 150 people. There are 336 people here tonight. I'm not sure why you're here, but I thank you for being here. And I hope that this level of participation will continue. We're used to seeing that when we have things like marijuana on the ballot or the warrant, but there's none on the warrant and hopefully none in the room because it is a school building. But I would ask that, thank you for coming, and I would hope that we would see you in the future here. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion that the amount of $8,975,000 be appropriated to be expended by the town manager in order to fund the following projects to the capital plan and to meet said appropriation, authorize the town treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow said sum under General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, or any other enabling authority, and that any premium received by the town upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, lest any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of the issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, thereby reducing the amount to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount. The projects. You don't think what numbers, right? One second, please. Glad somebody's paying attention. There's an error in that motion. So the amount in that motion is $9,286,000, and that's going to be a moderator's mistake. I was working from an earlier version. I was informed of the change, didn't make it in the right places in my document, so I apologize. The amount of the motion is $9,286,000. The projects, technology upgrades across the Ashland Public Schools, $75,000. Purchase of a pumper truck, $610,000. Replace outside bleachers at middle school and inside bleachers at the high school, $90,000. Downtown streetscape improvements, $5 million. Light poles, luminaries, and crosswalks for 126 project, $1,300,000. New modules at the Warren School, $711,000. Water utilities upgrade for downtown, $1,500,000. Do I have such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Mr. Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ken Rush, Belknap Circle. We have SCH5, 2 new modulars at Warren, $711,000, whereas the suggested capital items in the general fund was lease modulars at Warren School, $142,000. Could someone discuss the difference between those?
Mr. Herbert.
Yes, so the 142,000 number you're referencing are for 4 modulars, the lease payments for the 4 modulars that are currently in existence. These are for 2 new modulars that will be installed at the Warren School. So 2 additional modulars, I should say, purchase, I should say.
So Mr. Moderator, are we purchasing these 2 new modulars, or is this just
So-
the installation cost?
We're buying them. I saw a head shake.
Purchase and installation.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Nardone.
Okay, I have funding questions. The Chapter 90, which is for the asphalting for roads, the 1 million, how many years of state funding is that?
Mr. Herbert?
I'd say under the current funding amounts, it's about 2 years.
2 years. Because we have a lot of roads that are, they're really bad. I just want to make that note. The 1.5 out of the Water Enterprise Fund, again, this looks free. I'm just because I'm paying attention, a lot of that money was supposed to go to the MWRA connection, fixing the Hosmer pumping station in Southborough and the water tanks, and $400,000 for the water booster pump station on Independence Lane. So for us to replace that, doing the math here with the 14%, we would be looking at a 60% water increase. And this looks free now, but I think people need to hold on because you could have a massive water increase to put this back. Thank you.
I'm Brandy Kensman, 6 Lucy French Way. So first of all, I just wanted to thank town management for putting together this capital plan tonight. I believe that the Pond Street project and the downtown initiative will really truly transform our town. There's been a lot of focus on downtown, which I really do support, but tonight I want to speak on behalf of the Pond Street project, especially as a former member of the Ashland Redevelopment Authority. So I know Michael touched on this, but this has been a project that town leaders and volunteer project leaders have been involved in since before 2013. The Pond Street Working Group's been working with MassDOT since literally 2013, and it will bring over $16 million in state tax dollars back to Ashland to improve the entire corridor. What Michael touched on as well was not only will it improve the roadway, but it will add bike paths, sidewalks, and it will create a way for residents to walk to Shaw's for groceries, something that we haven't been able to do in this town. But we really should think about this project. We should thank the Pond Street Working Group, and especially Paula Parker, for all of their years of commitment to this project. Senator President Karen Spilka, Selectwoman Yolanda Greaves, as well as Michael Herbert, town planners, and DPW for all their work to keep this project.
That's time.
So please support Article 4. That's it.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Hanna.
I don't want to strangle somebody in the front row, so I'll be careful. On this list, is this subject to changes at any time? This $9 million is locked in to projects.
The amount we're voting on tonight is for a total amount for the individual amounts for each project. So for example, the school upgrade technology, $75,000. Only $75,000 can be spent on that.
Okay, I think I ride that one. Now, my concern is there are things that used to be on there that are now missing. So can one conclude that they finally became lazy and they're no longer an interest to the town? And the one that I'm most concerned about is our tie-in with Southborough. We have plans to how to tie in. We have plans who tells who's guilty. I mean, who are the partners and what the monies are for each of the events to take place. And then finally, yes, that's it. Now, we've been putting, it's about 1.3 to $4 million of Ashland's money. Most of it is to repair the Southborough's pumping station that's been out of order.
Jimmy, I'm going to interrupt you because you're talking about something that's not on the warrant.
I know, but if it's not on here, it's not on the warrant. It's not anywhere.
That's right, which means we can't talk about it.
Now, you and I are going to tangle again. Just let me finish.
Trust me, Jimmy, we're not.
Let me finish what I'm going to ask you. And maybe it'll change your mind. Probably not. But other people will be interested in the results.
You got 6 seconds.
Have I? I can't do it.
You were down to 6 seconds when I started talking.
There's $1.7 million, $1.5 million plus or minus monies that have been agreed to by Ashland and Southborough to someday do when they tie into the MWRA. The MWRA is another $1.25 million to invite us to it. Now, with that not showing up in the nearest plans, are you suggesting to me that that plan has now been exhausted and being
I am
built?
suggesting nothing of the sort. I am simply suggesting it's not on the warrant, so we're not going to talk about it. If you'd like to go to a selectmen's meeting, feel free to go and talk to them about it.
You know, you haven't stopped driving me crazy for 15 years.
It's been 8,
This
15.
This is
Any
clear-
other discussion on this article?
This is clearly an Ashland issue, and it's
Jimmy,
either
I'm
coming
not
up
disagreeing
immediately-
with you.
Well, guess what?
I'm
What
not,
do you-
all I'm suggesting is that we can't talk about something that's not on the warrant.
But it's going to happen to us. What do you wait to get punched first before you go down?
No, I run.
You know,
Would someone please take that
You're running
before
a hell of
I
a
go out and
show.
hit him with it? Any other discussion on this item? Because this involves borrowing or require 2/3 margin, we'll start with a vote by cards. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. And all those opposed? Oh, okay. I declare 2/3. For a moment, I thought it was unanimous, and I couldn't see that happen. Article 5, establish an economic development special revenue account, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, and the Economic Development Director. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court for special legislation entitled Town of Ashland Meals Tax Distribution to allow the town to create a special revenue fund for economic development and appropriate the local meals tax revenue into the fund for the purpose of economic development activities. Said legislation to read as is printed in your warrant book, because I'm not going to read it, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends the town approve an economic development special revenue account for the town funded by local meals tax. The account raised approximately $225,000 last year, and funds were deposited to the general fund. If supported, these funds would go into the special revenue account for the sole purpose of economic development. The FY19 annual town meeting for economic development, the appropriation, is $163,284. Should the town so vote, the Finance Committee requests that the Economic Development Director, through the Town Manager, provide an annual written report related to the expenditures from this special revenue account. Mr. Herbert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. How did I get this mic? Sorry about that. This doesn't work. We're done.
He's not going to read what's on that screen.
I promise I won't. So currently, right now, we get $225,000 in revenue that goes into the general fund in the bucket that's known as local receipts. What this does is it actually takes the funding out of the general fund and sets it aside into its own account specifically for economic development. So this account can only be used for economic development, and why would we do this? Well, the main reason is it gives us the ability to think more strategically about how we approach economic development in the future. By setting aside a special revenue account, we actually have the ability to accumulate funds when it makes sense to accumulate funds in this account. Otherwise, the way it currently is structured, money that is left over goes into what's known as free cash. There's opportunities that we might want to take advantage of that we see 2 or 3 years down the road that might require more money than what we currently have. So we might want to think, again, basically save up that money for a future benefit. We have a business incentive program that happens right now that we currently put about $60,000 into, that we could potentially put more into, and other things as well. I think you notice here in the FinCom recommendation, they recommended that a report be issued to town meeting and to the Finance Committee about the fund every year. I think we can take that, and I think one of the things that is really, really important is that even though we're going to set up a special revenue fund, the way this home rule petition works is we actually still have to present a budget to town meeting, and town meeting actually has to approve that budget each year. So you'll have full visibility and transparency into what's happening in the future. That's it.
Discussion, I'll entertain a motion. establishing an economic development special revenue account for the town funded by the local meals tax. Do I have such a motion?
Joan Confrati, One Shore Road. The verbiage difficult to get through. It says in what it is today, correct? Is that our meal tax?
So,
Mr. Herbert.
sorry. The meals tax is actually 7%. So there's the 6.25% that's a sales tax. And then in 2013, the town adopted what's known as the local options meals tax, which is 0.75.
Okay.
So this only refers to the 0.75% that goes to the town.
Okay, and it's not expecting to increase that at all?
No.
Okay. My second question is the economic development. And I apologize because I don't remember the details, but I remember reading an article about the town paying for new businesses in coordination with one of the banks. And I'm wondering if that is part of this also, or in what are the details of that?
This would help
Mr.
us
Herbert.
fund that, sorry, again. This would help us fund that program. Just to give you, actually, is Beth's here. Beth can give you an overview of the business incentive programs we have, and we have 3 of them, including the one with the bank that you referred to. Sarah does not want to give up the mic.
She doesn't want to give up the mic. Hi, I'm Beth Reynolds. I'm the Economic Development Director for the town. So a lot of what we're hoping for this fund is that we can really support our business incentive programs, which includes sign and facade improvements that businesses can take a part of, which helps subsidize any improvements on landscaping, signage, parking lots, as well as the second part being an amenities financing program where businesses can take advantage of this fund to help move into town or expand their current business. So they could use this money to take care of their rent for a few months while they're doing their tenant fit out, or they could use it for equipment costs if they want to expand. And then recently we've also partnered with Needham Bank to do a 0% interest-free loans for 2 years for businesses that want to take advantage of that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, you get the mic back.
All right, I got it back. In 2013...
Well, you have to tell us who you are.
I'm Sarah Hines, Elliott Street, Ashland. All right, in 2013, when this was originally put together, it was earmarked for 70% for economic development. The other 30% went partly to the library. And we've never been able to access it. The Redevelopment Authority tried to access it, and we were told we couldn't. And I'm not understanding why we're seeing this proposed again. I don't know how the wording has changed. I know that at the time, there was a commitment with the town, sort of a backdoor thing, that 70% of any taxes that came in automatically went to the schools. So when we drafted it before, we specifically made that earmark for economic development. But I don't know, this is why I'm curious why we're redoing something and why the other one didn't work before. So that's my question.
Mr. Herbert?
That's a good question. Thanks, Sarah. Yes, when we adopted this in 2013, we said that we would spend more money on economic development to the tune of about 70%, and then also money on libraries and then our human services programs. Now, the mechanism that we did that is through increasing the appropriation. The meals tax came into the general fund. We could not technically earmark it, but we increased the appropriations to correspond with the commitment that we had made to the public. And so we continue to do that. We've actually well exceeded what we have committed to, both in terms of economic development and funding to the library, and then also funding to human services as well. So again, the meals tax goes into the general fund. What this does is it separates it out specifically for economic development into its own fund. And again, it gives you the opportunity to accumulate if you need to and fund some of the other programs.
Kate?
Catherine Jerzyk, 11 Rodman Road. So I like the idea of that we can kind of save and have this fund. My concern is that I voted for, and I think people who voted for the meals tax was for 3 purposes. And so I have 2 questions related to that. I consider the library economic development, so I hope if the library needed it, it can come out. So I wanted to see how tightly the language going to the state or what that means. And then I guess getting the commitment that those things, I mean, there could be a downturn, and we tend to cut the library, and I hope we're a smarter community now, and that won't happen if a downturn. But I think we have to have assurances that those other things that we voted on aren't taken away by this special fund.
Mr. Herbert.
I can assure you that those will not be reduced beyond what we would have or what we have appropriated before. So just to give you some numbers, because I anticipated this question, because it's an important point. If we had added 15% of the meals tax and just utilized 15% of the meals tax money for the library, the 2013 budget would have increased to $326,289. We're actually spending $389,606. That's in the FY20 budget. That's almost 20% higher than if we had just done with the meals tax alone. Council on Aging was a very similar circumstance. We were spending $115,485 in 2013. If we just added 15% of the meals tax to that, if you looked at the Council on Aging budget and just isolated that out of human services, that budget would have been $149,235. We're actually spending $195,824 strictly just for Council on Aging, not talking about the human services elements that help support that as well. That's actually 31% more than just if it was the meals tax alone. So I can assure you that we would never go below those numbers, but I mean, it's my assurance. I mean, that would have to be a big reduction that would be a really substantial reduction to any of those departments.
Mr. the moderator, just a follow-up that if that is in the fund, what could be the interpretation of the state about what is the economic development if we needed that money for the library?
Mr. Manager?
I agree with you. I would make the case that the library is economic development for our town. That's what DOR's position would be in. The other thing I think it's really important to point out is that this home rule petition gives the town the ability to dissolve this fund by a 2/3, I believe it's a 2/3 majority. So if you feel like it's not being used appropriately, or if we feel like by earmarking this money for economic development, these other services are suffering, town meeting can vote to dissolve the fund and we could reappropriate money.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ryan Turncliffe, 20 on Rossi Lane. I do serve on the Finance Committee. These comments are on my own behalf. I don't need to echo the comments of Sarah and Kate. I do support them. And I guess I just wanted to make an additional point, 2 additional points. One was when initially voted, the mills tax was supposed to allocate 12% to open space and fields. And you know, we probably are meeting that commitment and beyond. I don't question that per se. But I would like to be able to be flexible with our funds, our tax dollars or meals tax dollars, and we can do that with the general fund. This puts a statutory requirement, establishes a fund that would be a little bit more challenging to get out of. It's true that 2/3 majority could do that, but it does require a warrant article to come before town meeting, which requires the townspeople to get up and say, we don't want to do this anymore. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Sir.
Ashwinathan Chitani, 10 Arbor Road. I'm still confused in terms of exactly what we get by actually creating the fund rather than leaving it the way you've got it right now. Sounds like we are investing in the right things, but again, to the points that have been made earlier, this would put additional restrictions in terms of what the money can be used for. What exactly is the advantage?
What was the second?
The question essentially, why is this different from what we're doing now?
And what's the advantage really of doing it this way rather than what we've been doing anyway? Because I'm sure you can roll the money forward if you've got more money anyway.
You answered your own question. You can't roll the money over. Mr. Manager?
That's correct. This fund gives you the ability to accumulate funds in that fund for future strategic purposes if you want to. So you might, like I said, the meals tax is about $225,000. We would present a budget potentially that only has $165,000 that would be appropriated from that fund. It would still leave that $60,000 in that fund for future years that we could utilize.
Is there a strict set of definitions as to what qualifies as economic development? Because I think that would clarify maybe some of the concerns.
We've actually, it's pretty broad here. I believe what we have is funds shall be used to support economic development activities, operations, and administration in the town of Ashland. In addition, but not limited to Chapter 40 of the Acts of 2018, that's the business incentive program that Beth mentioned.
Thank you.
Ms. Nardone?
2 comments. This now puts the salary in there of the economic development director. So like, I don't know, 85% will be salary, and that'll keep growing every year. And if you add more staff, it could potentially all be salary. 2, I guess what bothers me about this is, once again, something got changed in the background, and no one knew it was even going to be changed. I mean, none of us were said, hey, we want to take this money and maybe divvy it up a different way, and maybe there's some of the artists in here, maybe we'd like public art or something, but again, it's the old choice of one. We walk in here and it's like, oh, it's going to this, and nobody else had a say, and that's what I have a problem with.
Ma'am.
Hi, I'm Paula Parker, 415 Captain Eames Circle. I have a comment, a couple of comments. I'll keep it brief, but I was one of the ones who originally championed the meals tax because since moving to Ashland in 2004, every time I got up before the Board of Selectmen, I have always been told that there's zero money for economic development. Michael Herbert and Tony Schiavi came along and changed that. And since developing the meals tax and appropriating the money to economic development, things are changing. I don't think that $200,000 against a $62 million budget for economic development, which this meals tax was originally appropriated for, is not, I mean, it's a pittance. So I obviously support it. I thank you, Michael. I thank you, Yolanda. I thank everybody that's been helping to champion the economic development in Ashland.
Thank you. Chris?
While I support economic development, in particular our economic development director and the programs that we have in place, I think if we're talking about defining how we allocate our meals tax, I think we need to consider some percentage of it going to our health department, which is responsible for help sustaining the businesses that generate the meals tax.
Roberta, you get the last comment.
Roberta Stillman, 28 Woodridge Lane. I just need a point of clarification because I'm a little confused. If we vote for this, does this undo what we had previously voted for in 2013, where the meals tax had particular targets of appropriation, like the library and the family services and elderly services?
Could you clarify? Some folks, 2 folks have said, at least 2, that we voted. Would you clarify how that determination was originally made and the force of that determination, and then answer Roberta's question, please?
Sure. So this is, it's the mechanics of municipal finance which sometimes makes, they're not logical, all right? So in 2013, we saw that we needed to spend money on economic development, that we needed to spend money on our library, open space, as was mentioned, and then also our senior services. Because those had been, we didn't really have an economic development budget, and we had decimated the other services over, the course of the recession. But we didn't have any additional revenue to put towards those resources at the time. So what we said was, we have the ability to adopt this local options meals tax, which gives us, at the time, is around $200,000. And so while the vote itself didn't direct that money towards those services, we said, okay, we're going to increase the appropriation of those services with the corresponding amount of the money in the meals tax that we received. So they were separate mechanically, but they were tied together policy-wise. To answer your question, no, this is not going to change how we allocate or appropriate money towards these departments or open space. Probably the only change would be for economic development, where we have the ability to put, I guess, more into the economic development budget.
Okay, so I guess what I don't understand is that economic development is the only thing specified in here. The other things that are tied to it by policy are not tied to it by specific legislative language.
Correct.
And that seems maybe not okay.
Thank you. All right. This
Mr. Moderator, could I just make one final comment?
emphasis on final.
Okay. This is a final for the night or final?
I don't know. We can take a vote on that.
Okay. There are two methods of control that town meeting has here. So first off is the budget. So we have to present a budget with how we're going to spend this money each year to you, and town meeting has to vote on that appropriation just like you do the general omnibus budget. So Chris makes a very good point. Potentially some of this revenue should go to the health department, and especially inspections. Maybe that's what we do include in the budget moving forward. But you have the ability to, if we put a budget forward that you don't like, you have the ability to vote it down and say, we would like to spend it on somewhere else or something else related to economic development. The other thing is that you have the ability to dissolve the fund with a 2/3 vote of town meeting. So I think those are two really important controls that town meeting has with relation to this fund if you don't like the way it's being spent.
Thank you. This requires a simple majority. We'll start with a card vote. All those in favor of the motion on Article 5, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? And that passes. Article 6, transfer the Robert Hill Way revenue to the Affordable Housing Trust sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. See if the town will vote to appropriate, transfer, or otherwise fund a sum of money to the Affordable Housing Trust, the basis of which is the sale proceeds from land known as Robert Hill Way, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends the town vote to transfer the amount of $503,500 received from the sale of the Robert Hill Way property to the Affordable Housing Trust for the purposes of future affordable housing needs. Should the town so vote, the Finance Committee suggests that a sunset clause of 3 years be considered. Ms. Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Robert Hill Way is a development that is going in off Independence Lane in Ashland. The land was purchased from the town, and an affordable housing development is being built there. As Ashland is working on increasing its affordable housing stock, we are putting forth this article so that the proceeds from the sale of the land go to the Affordable Housing Trust. The Ashland Affordable Housing Trust mission is to sponsor and assist the Board of Selectmen in the development of affordable housing opportunities for persons of low and moderate income, as well as qualified seniors in the town of Ashland, in order to implement the town's affordable housing plan and policies. The Affordable Housing Trust is supposed to be a 5-member board. At the time, there are 2 vacancies. We ask that you support this transfer of funds so that the money can be dedicated to increasing our affordable housing from the current 4% to the state-required level of 10%.
Moment. The town manager is helping me get my steps in for the night. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion that the town appropriate $503,500 and transfer to the Affordable Housing Trust for the purpose of development of affordable housing in the town. Do I have such a motion? So moved. Discussion, Ms. Hines.
Hey, I got up here. I just have a question. Sunset clause, what do you mean? You're going to transfer money. Why would it be sunsetted for in 3 years? I don't understand. It's just sort of like a one-time thing. I'm just a
Why don't we
question.
let the Finance Committee answer that because it was their recommendation?
Okay.
Mr., I'm not sure which, Turncliffe.
Yeah, thank you. The Finance Committee felt it may be in the best interest if the money was not utilized in an appropriate period of time to be returned to the general fund for town use. The Finance Committee isn't convinced that the Affordable Housing Trust has facilitated strong projects in recent years, and similar to previous CPC articles, we recommended a sunset clause.
It's hard to hear it's hard to hear you. I mean, are you saying that if the Affordable Housing Trust
Let me try.
doesn't use
I'm
it-
just going to repeat what he said because my mic seems to be working better. He was suggesting that the Finance Committee felt that, I'm not making an editorial comment, I'm trying to paraphrase, the lack of execution by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund recently. They were concerned that the money would go to the Affordable Housing Trust and just sit there and not be used. So they were recommending that if it was not used after 3 years, it returned to the general fund to be reappropriated by the town. Did I get that right?
Yeah, another way to say that would be that we're trying to incentivize the use of that fund.
Right, but isn't that sort of a violation of the setup for the Affordable Housing Trust? I mean, it has a certain structure to it.
So
And
just
if you put the money in, I'm not sure you can take it back.
We're going to, do you want to, or did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we
Mr.
do-
Herbert? Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Herbert.
So we actually do this, well, we've recently done this with CPA funds. When CPA has transferred affordable housing money to the Affordable Housing Trust, they've included a sunset clause on it that says if you don't spend it within a few years, a period of time, whether 2 or 3 years, it actually goes back to CPA. So
Okay, all right.
Michael Eisenberg, 49 Half Crown Circle. Question I got is, if this article does not pass, what happens to the proceeds of the sale?
I would say Mr. Moderator. Mr. Town Manager.
This money would go to free cash at the end of the year and would be distributed at the fall town meeting in accordance with our financial policies, which includes going to stabilization fund, our OPEB liabilities, capital, and then potentially our special education stabilization fund.
A follow-up question, Mr. Moderator. If I understood that answer, what we're saying is that the town would then not have the opportunity to use the free cash to go into the Affordable Housing Fund. It would have to go into one of the funds just listed. Is that correct?
At special town meeting, the town has the ability to put free cash anywhere it so chooses, anywhere town meeting chooses.
Thank you.
Ms. Nardone?
I am voting against this. If the money should go anywhere, it should go to buy 56 and 60 Independence Lane, because this housing project is going to make those homes probably unsellable. This is a tragedy. It's so sad it makes me want to cry. We voted this down in November 2013, but here we are with the money. And it's because this project was aggressively pursued against the will of the people. And I find it so sad. And I think I'm going to go home and cry because it's horrible.
Sir?
Mr. Moderator, Aaron Ladd, Pleasant Street. Point of question. If the Finance Committee makes a recommendation and that recommendation is not included in the motion, do we need to amend the motion to include that language?
There's no requirement that it be done. It's optional. It can be done.
Can I make a motion that the motion be edited to include the 3-year sunset clause?
If you'd like to, you may.
Can you help me describe how to do that?
So I'm guessing that you would like to make
I would like to amend the motion that currently states that the town appropriate amount of money to the Affordable Housing Trust. It does not include a 3-year sunset clause, to include the 3-year sunset clause as stated by the FinCom recommendation.
Okay. So
You can help me with the wording.
Typically, we ask for these in writing, but the town manager is going to ask me or tell me something right now.
Just in general, I find it odd that.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I thank you for your comment. I've just been informed that the Board of Selectmen has opted to withdraw this article.
Okay.
So we will be moving on to Article 7, known as the Jimmy Hanna article. I'm not sure why the warrant says transfer to OPEB trust. It should say the Jimmy Hanna article. Article 7, transfer to OPEB trust, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. To see if the town will transfer $157,156 from the OPEB contribution account to the OPEB trust, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends the town transfer the sum of $157,156 from the OPEB contribution account to the OPEB trust account. Mr. Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dare I say it, this is a routine transfer. We do this every year. Can you hear me all right? All right, sorry. So if folks have come to town meeting before, we do this every year, at least in recent history. It's our effort to adequately fund post-employment benefits for town employees. Other post-employment benefits refers to basically health care for retirees. So we have a formula based on new employees plus new employees from previous years when we started doing this, and that's what determines that amount. It's about 2.5 million now. It's about 5% of what is estimated it's needed, but this is our attempt to do this every year to properly fund it, and of course it goes to, having underlying strong financial structure and a good bond rating. So this is one of those prudent financial things that we do every year, and I would just ask your support for this. Thank you.
To allow discussion and Mr. Hanna's comment, I'll entertain a motion that the town transfer.
Wait a minute, I didn't make a comment yet.
I know, but I have to read the motion so you can.
Oh, thank you.
Because you get the first comment, Jimmy. I mean, it's your article.
You're doing good.
To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion that the town transfer the sum of $157,176 from OPEB contribution account 01915-51709 to the OPEB trust account 88100-49710. Do I have such a motion? Mr. Hanna.
Yes. First of all, I'm totally in favor of this OPEC, yes, money gathering institution. But what is important to me is I'm a little bit disappointed that it's only 1.5, because prior to this town meeting, it was around 2.2. Now it looks like we're going in the wrong direction. Prior to this, we had two
Mr.
accounts.
Hanna, I just want to stop you for 1 second. You're not losing your time. We stopped the clock.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you have your numbers wrong.
Do I?
I think
Well,
you do.
then-
The balance in the OPEB trust is $2.5 million.
Oh, I saw one. I thought I saw one.
You saw 157, which is the amount that the article seeks to add to that $2.5 million.
Well, I didn't see it as additive, but fine. I'm very pleased with that, and I'm sorry I couldn't took some of your time, but
I'm glad we could help you out, Jimmy. Any further discussion on this article, on the Jimmy Hanna article? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote with your cards. Thank you, and opposed. And that passes unanimously. Article 8, amend agreement for the South Middlesex Regional Vocational School District sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. To see if the town will vote to amend the agreement among the towns of Ashland, Holliston, Hopkinton, and Natick, and the city of Framingham with respect to establishment of a regional vocational school district to incorporate prior amendments to said agreement, to eliminate outdated provisions, to recognize Framingham's change from a town to a city form of government, and to bring said agreement into alignment with the district's existing practices, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends that the town so vote. Mr. Mignani.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I don't know if anybody can, you can hear me now. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This actually is a house cleaning measure of the current agreement that is utilized by the South Middlesex Regional Vocational School District, which comprises the town of Ashland, Holliston, Hopkinton, Natick, and now the new called city of Framingham. The purpose updates the district's agreement to accomplish the 5 things that I have here quickly. First, to incorporate the prior amendments to the district agreement and eliminate outdated provisions that relate only to the initial formation of the district, and that's when Framingham was a town and not a city. Second, the recognition of Framingham recent change from being a town to a city. And third, to bring the district agreement into alignment with the district's existing policies and practices. Fourth, there is an amendment regarding the manner in which Tuition receipts are to be utilized and offset costs for the purpose of simplifying the district's budget and its process. Last, they advise provisions that the Commission of the Department of Elementary Education, or DESE, to accommodate the former town of Framingham, now known as Framingham. They needed to get all that wording changed because of the fact that Framingham is now a city. So it's a little update and house cleaning and changing the wording so that it complies with the City of Framingham's new title, and we're all working off the same page and the same amendment.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Vignani. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion that the town approve the amendment to the South Middlesex Regional Vocational School District as printed and made available to town meeting as part of the Finance Committee recommendation package. Do I have such a motion? So moved. Discussion. Crickets. This will require a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes, but not unanimously. Article 9, Annual Consent Article General, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. To see if the town will vote the following consent articles, which I shall not read in their entirety. 1, grant program authorization. 2, road contracts. 3, contracts in excess of 3 years. 4, lease purchase agreements. 5, revolving funds. 6, easements. The Finance Committee recommends the town vote in favor of the consent articles set forth in Article 9. Given the routine nature of the items contained within consent articles, they are normally voted without discussion. As such, I will ask for a motion and to move directly to a vote. Entertain a motion that, I'll have to read the motion, that the town approve, I appreciate the enthusiasm though, that the town approve Article 9 as written, and further that the town set the maximum amount that may be spent on revolving funds in subsection 5 of Article 9 as is indicated in the warrant book. Do I have such a motion? So moved. This will require a 2/3 majority due to the inclusion of easements. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed? That passes unanimously. Article 10, Annual Consent Article, Community Preservation Act, sponsored by the CPC. To see if the town will vote the following items, and I'm going to warn you ahead of time, what I'm about to read is not what we're going to vote on, and I'll tell you about that at the end. To see if the town will vote the following items: Community Preservation Funds FY20 appropriations from FY19 estimated revenues to committee administrative expense, $53,311.52. From FY20 estimated revenues to Historic Resources Reserve, to Community Housing Reserve, and to Open Space Reserve, $101,291.89 each. And from FY20 estimated revenues to Undesignated Budget Reserve, $709,043.20. B, Community Preservation Funds Oak Street Bond Payment to appropriate $168,150. C, Community Preservation Funds High School Athletic Fields Bond Payment to appropriate $342,650. D, Community Preservation Funds Warren Woods Bond Payment to appropriate $171,875, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. Due to an administrative error, the amounts and some of the year references included in the warrant for Article 10 are actually from last year, not this year. As such, the Community Preservation Committee has included the corrected amounts in its recommendation. The Community Preservation Committee recommends the town vote the following amounts. A, Community Preservation Funds FY20 annual appropriations from FY 2020 estimated revenues to committee administrative expense, $57,274.67. Reserves from FY 20 estimated revenues to Historic Resources Reserve, to Community Housing Reserve, and to Open Space Reserve, $108,821.88 each. And from FY 20 estimated revenues to Undesignated Reserve, $761,753.17. B, Community Preservation Funds Oak Street Bond Payment, $167,045. Community Preservation Funds High School Athletic Fields Bond Payment, $334,250. Community Preservation Funds Warren Woods Bond Payment, $166,875. The Finance Committee recommends the town vote in favor of the Community Preservation Act consent items as recommended by the CPC. Just a note, the amounts being appropriated for items B, C, and D in this article, those are the bond payments, are in each case less than the amounts appropriated last year. As with Article 7, due to the routine and recurring nature of this article, I'll ask for a motion and then move directly to a vote. I'll entertain a motion that consent Article 10 be approved as recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. Do I have such a motion? So moved. Requires a simple majority. All those in favor? Thank you. And opposed? That passes but not unanimously. And on behalf of town management, I do apologize for the error. Article 11, transfer approximately 1 acre at Warren Woods, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. To see if the town will vote to transfer the care, custody, and control of a portion of the property known as Warren Woods, consisting of approximately 43,866 square feet from the Board of Selectmen to the Conservation Commission for the purpose of conservation and passive recreation purposes, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends the town so vote. Ms. Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Before we get to the meat of this article, I would just like to give you a little history. Warren Woods was purchased back in 2012. When it was purchased, the land was split into 2 parcels. The back parcel that would be kept in its natural state under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, and the front parcel, about 19 acres, that was proposed for possible playing fields and active recreation under the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen. After input from Ashland residents, it was voted to combine both parcels and only allow passive recreation and combine it all under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, except for a 1 acre envelope that would remain under the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen. As we move forward as a town and have now created the Warren District and created a position to manage the district, it makes sense to remove the envelope from the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen and roll it into the full parcel. Should this article pass, it will be important for the residents of Ashland to stay involved with the development of the whole district and ensure that it reflects everyone's vision of this very special part of Ashland's history.
Thank you, Ms. Greaves. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion that the town transfer the care, custody, and control of a portion of the property known as Warren Woods, more fully set forth as proposed building envelope on a plan of land entitled Plan of Land, Proposed Building Envelope, Ashland, Massachusetts, by GLM Engineering Consultants, Inc., and dated February 9, 2016, consisting of approximately 43,866 square feet, more or less, from the Board of Selectmen to the Conservation Commission for the purpose of conservation and passive recreation purposes. Do I have such a motion? So moved. Discussion. Seeing none, this will require a 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. And opposed. That passes, but not unanimously. Article 12, creation of an HRA stabilization fund sponsored by the Director of Finance, Town Manager. This article, after further guidance and clarification from the Department of Revenue, Article 12 is being withdrawn as it is not necessary to create a stabilization fund to accomplish the desired outcome. We apologize, but the Department of Revenue gave bad advice, good advice, bad advice, good advice. It took a while to get this resolved. Article 13, accept statute and amend the Chapter 178 of the Town of Ashland bylaws, fingerprinting, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. See if the town will vote to accept General Laws, Chapter 6, Section 172B1 half, and amend the Town of Ashland general bylaws by adding a new section, 178-2, fingerprint-based background checks for applicants requesting licenses from the town for certain specified occupations, as is printed in your handbooks. Or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends approval of the bylaw as presented in the article. Mr. Scherer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So this is the infamous fingerprinting article that people may remember from last town meeting. Hopefully things will go a little more smoothly this time. Basically, under state law, we're required to do a criminal record check via fingerprints for ice cream vendors, for whatever reason. So that's what this article provides for. The Ashland Police Department would go to the Ashland Police to get their fingerprints taken and do a National Crime Information Center records check. And when it comes back, they would discuss it with the police, and if they want to go forward with their license application, basically to the select board, then they could do so. And we would take any results from that check into account in deciding whether or not to issue a license to be an ice cream vendor. So The chief is here, I think, available to answer any detailed questions about that, but that's basically the gist of it. So I would ask your support for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion in your handbook is inadvertently abridged, so I'm going to read what the motion should be. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion that the town accept Chapter 6, Section 172B, 1/2, which is not in your handbook, and amend the Ashland general bylaws as printed in Article 13 of the warrant. Do I have such a motion? So moved. Discussion. Come on down.
Hi, Motto Gertside, Hilldale Road. Just wondering if the background check involved here would include immigration status?
If the background check, I didn't hear that.
Would the background check conducted with this fingerprinting include immigration status?
Will the background check include immigration status? Chief. Let me introduce Chief Vinny Alfano, our interim police chief. For those of you who haven't met him, this is Vinny. Vinny, this is everybody.
Well, good evening to everybody. The question was asked, does it check immigration status? No, it does not. The check is done through the Mass State Police. It's referred to the FBI. It's a criminal history check. It does not check immigration status.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Really? Okay. This only requires a simple majority, so I'll quickly move to a vote before anyone changes their mind. All those in favor? Thank you. And opposed? That passes, but not unanimously. Well, that was about an hour less than we spent last time.
Must have been my presentation.
Yeah, definitely, Rob. It was all you. Article 14, illicit discharge and connection prohibitions, compliance with EPA MS4 permits, sponsored by the Stormwater Advisory Committee. To see if the town will amend the Town of Ashland general bylaws by renumbering the sections in Chapter 247 and adding a new section, 247-1, entitled Illicit Discharge and Illicit Connections as follows. Item 1, retitle the chapter to read, quote, Stormwater Management and Illicit Discharges and Connections, unquote. Item 2, renumber the current sections 247-1 through 247-15 to read instead A, Stormwater Management, and then 247-1-1 through 247-1-15 consecutively. Item 3, and a new section, B, illicit discharges and illicit connections, as is printed in your handbook. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion. Sorry. The Finance Committee recommends the town so vote. Mr. White, Mr. Evan White, Town Engineer, will be speaking on this article. There he is.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for staying so late tonight for this article. I truly appreciate your time on this matter. My name is Evan White. I'm the project engineer at the Department of Public Works for the town of Ashland. The illicit discharge detection and elimination, or IDDE bylaw that we proposed at this town meeting is essential to comply with our municipal separate storm sewer system, or MS4 permit. This is a federally mandated program from the EPA that we must comply with. The proposed bylaw gives the DPW the authority necessary to identify, investigate, and eliminate illicit discharges. It is consistent with bylaws already implemented in municipalities within the state of Massachusetts. Stormwater is the greatest contributing factor to pollution of our waterways, and this bylaw will give the town of Ashland the tools it needs to ensure we comply with our permit and do the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. White. To allow discussion, I'll entertain a motion. The town amend Chapter 247 of the Town of Ashland bylaws by renumbering the existing sections and adding a new section 247-1 entitled Illicit Discharge and Illicit Connections as printed in the warrant. Do I have such a motion? So moved. Discussion.
Hi, Christopher Ramsey, Riverview Drive, sorry.
So my question is, if the goal with this is then to comply with EPA standards, without getting political, there's been a massive swing in the past couple of years between EPA standards and how they've been driven, and that may go in the other direction again, who knows. Is whatever you're trying to set up as a bylaw, is that going to hold up to likely ebbs and flows of EPA standards?
Who wants to take that one? No one wants to take it. Someone needs to answer it. Town Council, we haven't heard from you tonight.
I haven't gotten to speak tonight, so I'll answer.
So have at it.
So the MS4 permit has been part of the long-term plan for stormwater discharge and illicit discharge from the EPA and then enforced through DEP for 20 years, maybe. So it's in different sections. So there was an MS3 a few years ago, which everybody adopted the stormwater permits under, and now the MS4 requires. So it's a progression to control and clean stormwater and illicit discharges. So it's a continuing progression over numerous administrations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing nothing further, this requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And at 9:14, there be no further business. I'll entertain a motion to dissolve. All in favor? Have a good night, everyone. Wow.